Hi everyone, I'm Shruti Nagpal, COO Asian School of Cyber Laws, and I'm here to discuss an extremely important case which recently came up in the Allahabad High Court. So the question that we are trying to answer today is very simple. Can liking a post land you in jail? Now up front it seems like a very obvious answer, but there are nuances to this that we must discuss. The case that I'm referring to is Imran Khan versus the state of UP and another. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to run you through the actual details of this course very quickly. The case basically spoke about somebody having gone and liked, that is Imran Khan having gone and liked a provocative post on Facebook. And he was booked under Section 67 of the Information Technology Act. The question then arises, can liking a post land you in jail? And what I would like to see is, I'd like to bring in an expert to answer this question. The expert today is Gokul Narayan, who is the CEO of Asian School of Cyber Laws. So let's bring him on. Hi, Gokul.
Hi, Shruti, can you hear me? Am I audible?
Absolutely. Can everyone else hear us? Please send us a quick thumbs up if you can hear us.
I can hear you, but I'm not able to see you for some reason. But are you able to hear
Let's
us?
hope that's not the case everywhere else.
Okay, all right. Just send us a thumbs up in case you can hear and see us, and then we'll dive right into discussing this. Okay, all right. Thanks, Puneet. Thank you for saying that. Shuchi, so you've already introduced what the case is about. I'll just give a little bit more clarification before jumping into an explanation of Section 67 of the Information Technology Act. Now, what had basically happened was a gentleman by the name of Imran Khan was booked for liking a Facebook post created by this gentleman called Chaudhry Farhan Usman. Now, the post called for gathering of about 600 to 700 people from the Muslim community before the collectorate to hand over a memorandum to the President of India. This in itself seems rather unprovocative, but nonetheless, the authorities claimed that it had the potential to disturb public order, and the fact that Imran Khan had gone and liked this post by Chaudhry Farhan Usman, this landed him in trouble under Section 67 of the Information Technology Act. There was a case that was filed. This case was set aside by the court with an explanation as to what Section 67 is, in what circumstances it applies, and under what circumstances it is not applicable. And that's what this discussion is going to be about. Would you like to start off with some questions generally?
Yeah. Absolutely. So I would want, through my questions today, to bring out as much of the details of the case and the legality of exactly what went on. So let's just very quickly start for our audience by asking you this question. Could you explain a little bit more about Section 67 of the Information Technology Act and what it actually covers?
Right. Section 67 of the Information Technology Act talks primarily about publication and transmission of material which is lascivious or sexually explicit in nature. The header of the section uses the word prohibition of publication of content which is obscene content. It then goes about using 2 or 3 words which I need to explain. It first of all says you cannot publish or transmit material which is lascivious, which means sexually exciting. You cannot publish or transmit material which is prurient, which means something that provokes lustful thoughts in people. And the last part says no content that can tend to deprave or corrupt people, having regard to all relevant circumstances, who see, hear, or read the matter embodied in that transmission. If such content is transmitted, then it could be a violation of 67. So that's what the conversation's about. The police said that they have put in content which has the potential to incite a provocative response, and therefore Section 67 is violated.
Okay.
That's what the gist of the problem was.
Okay. Now, as you've already explained the police's point of view,
Yeah.
right? That the allegation that was made was because of a provocative post, and so can you explain why there is the possibility that the court would have quashed this particular thing against Imran Khan, and would have said that liking does not necessarily mean so. The section obviously has several different aspects to it. Could you sort of break it down with regard to this particular case?
All right. So let's be very clear about what the intent of Section 67 is. The intent of Section 67 is to control the spread of sexually exciting content. I'm using the word exciting and not explicit because that's not what the intent of 67 is. The idea is try and restrict the spread of sexually exciting content. In its very nature, because of the words used under the section, it's very clear that that is the intent of the section, to control sexually exciting content, lustful thoughts, provocative content, which is of that nature. But the words used in the last part of the section is what the police focused on. The court, on the other hand, very clearly distinguished this, saying that this section clearly talks about sexually exciting content and therefore cannot be generically used. So there are two or three aspects that we need to focus on over here. Number one, we have to understand that the nature of the communication which was spoken about in this case was not sexually explicit at all.
Correct. Absolutely.
Right? Number one, and therefore it puts it outside the purview of Section 67.
Okay.
This primarily comes into force whenever people are watching pornographic content and things like that. And it says that you cannot publish or transmit material which is sexually explicit in nature. So it applies in that scenario. So first of all, it does not apply in the current case because the content that was transmitted, if at all, was to incite some kind of provocation from the public and not sexual in nature. The court clarified that. Secondly, the court further went on to clarify that the words used under this section are to publish and or to transmit. Now, to publish and to transmit means, in the most generic sense, to publish means to make known to a third person. So, for example, if I have some content and I send it across to you, I have published such content to you with the intention that you get aware of it. To transmit, in the context of what is provided under the Information Technology Act, talks about sending of the content from one device to another device.
So, for example, forwarding or sharing would mean that?
Correct. A sharing would be something that falls overlapping between publishing and transmitting, because sharing would result in you viewing it, which could entail publishing. It would also entail the idea of it being transmitted from one device to another device. So therefore, basically the Venn diagram of these three things would overlap. But very clearly, liking does not amount to publishing or to transmitting. The section is very clear. You cannot publish or transmit material which is sexually exciting in nature or obscene in nature. The word obscene, according to the court, cannot be construed in such a manner that it has the kind of content that was being objected about. Does that make sense?
So you're basically trying to say that there seems to have been a difference, very clear difference drawn between obscene and say provocative. Am I right on that? I mean, yeah.
Provocative of the nature as to incite some kind of communal violence, some kind of disharmony amongst people. Provocative, not of a sexual nature.
Okay.
Yeah, it can be provocative content of a sexual nature also.
All right.
So, if it is of a sexual nature, very clearly it cannot be in the context of a sexual. It cannot have a sexual context to it, number one. And number two, in the context that sharing is not the same as liking. Liking a post cannot land you in trouble under Section 67 of the Information Technology Act, very clearly.
So I'm going to drop in there. Now tell me, you've made this statement very clearly, right? Liking a post which may under Section 67 cannot possibly get you into trouble, cannot land you in jail. What about liking a provocative post? Not necessarily sexual in nature.
Even then, so for example, let's presume that there is some sexual content out there, and I go and like that sexual content. All right. Even that cannot land you in trouble because the words used under the section are very clearly publishing and transmitting. It is not liking. Now,
Okay.
the question that we need to ask ourselves is, can the word liking be construed in a large enough manner to entail within its ambit publishing and transmitting? My opinion is no. It cannot be, because if you share, the requirement under the law is some active participation in the dissemination of that information. Because, for example, if I want to publish it, I take that information and I send it to you. If I transmit it, I take it on one device and I send it to another device. Sharing or liking does not result in that transmission. So even if I go and like a particular post, I'm not sending it to the people that I like. The Instagram algorithm, on the other hand, may say that, oh, Gokul Narayan has liked such post. People who are his friends may also like it and may push that content onto their viewing content. But that has nothing to do with me. That has to do with an algorithmic formula that Instagram is following. Does that make
Very
sense?
true. Absolutely, absolutely. And on that point, I'm just hoping we're also getting a lot of likes here so that those are getting pushed by the Instagram algorithm to the followers of those people also. Aja, but coming back to my point, so basically you're trying to point out that unless there is the active act of going and liking a post,
Correct.
there is no way that just because an algorithm of a social media platform asks you to, pushes a particular post to somebody because their friend has liked it, there should not be any trouble with something like this. Am I right on that? I mean,
Absolutely right. Under Section 67, it would not be. Section 67, unfortunately, is a very misconstrued section. It scares people, but let's get the reality of that section very clearly placed in our minds. It is to stop the dissemination of sexually provocative content.
All right.
Very clearly, and the dissemination thereof. So I would also like to clarify, it says publication and transmission. So I'd go as much as to say that the section in itself does not prohibit individuals from watching sexually explicit content, but it says don't publish or transmit content which is of a lascivious nature or of a prurient nature. Don't publish or transmit it, but it does not prohibit even individuals from watching it. And liking it is also not covered within the scope of that section.
So basically, to bring it down to layperson's terms, which is exactly what I keep doing for myself, are you trying to say that watching, say, obscene content or pornographic content in India is not illegal?
Okay, if you want me to say that, yes, I'm going to go ahead and say it. Watching pornographic content in India is not illegal. Publishing or transmitting is.
Now,
so, in a nutshell, dekh lo par dikhao mat, if I can say that.
Right. Okay, and again, and this is on a very serious note, does the same apply for, say, for example, child porn?
No, absolutely not.
That clarification also put in here.
Section 67 capital B is a very well drafted section which says that browsing, seeking, requesting, collecting any content which shows children in a sexually explicit act or conduct will land you in trouble. You cannot do anything as long as it is relating to children or minors. Basically, minors below the age of 18 are treated as children under the Information Technology Act. Any content which involves them in any sexual activity, you cannot request, browse, seek, store, transmit. You can't do anything with respect to that. The law is very, very strict and very clear about it.
Fantastic. Thank you for clarifying that so well. To bring you back to Section 67, considering this particular case, do you believe that there is a clarification required within the law also, drawing a difference between what may be considered lascivious and what may be considered purely provocative?
I don't think so. I think the words in itself are extremely clear. The word lascivious is not an ambiguous term in this context, at least. However, the section in itself, I believe, is a little redundant, and we've got a new section 67A in place, which satisfies the requirements of trying to control sexually explicit content much better. See, the problem with this section is what is sexually exciting for me may not be sexually exciting for you. There isn't a standard that we can draw. There's no line that demarcates sexually explicit content from non-sexually explicit content. Or sorry, let me not use the word explicit because that's in 67A. Sexually exciting content from non-sexually exciting content. There's no demarcation line. The unfortunate reality is when such a case comes before a court, it becomes to the discretion of the judge to decide whether the communication that is being that has happened between two individuals, according to the judge's perspective, happens to fall within the purview of sexually exciting content or not. And therefore, in that regard, it becomes a little ambiguous. But whether it can be made applicable to generally provocative or insightful content for in the context of communal violence or things like that, or public unrest, absolutely not. There is no confusion at all.
Okay, great. Now, on the horizon is also the intermediary rules, the new ones which have been introduced, and we've also contributed to those rules when when public opinion was asked for.
Yeah.
So, what I would
Suddenly I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, am I back?
Yeah.
Am I back? Yeah, great. All right. So also what I would like to know is whether when the new rules come in, should they also include new age expressions like likes and various emojis which can possibly express an opinion on social media? Should that also be included somewhere in the law?
I think, see, I'm a little unsure about it because technological developments will keep happening. Today it's a like, tomorrow it'll be something else. Today it's an emoji, tomorrow it'll be something else.
True.
Now, every technological advancement cannot be specifically included into the law. The law generally is broadly worded so as to be able to accommodate these technological advancements that keep taking place. And therefore, the law has the ability, in the odd circumstance where we find ourselves in a situation where a technological advancement has happened and the law finds itself incapable of dealing with it, then yes, a requirement in terms of trying to update the law will happen. Otherwise, I think the law is sufficiently broadly enough worded to be able to accommodate these changes for now. I don't think specifically you should include likes, because today likes are relevant. In another 5 years, like might become likes as a concept of popularity of a particular social media content may become a redundant concept, and then something new will come up.
Okay, so before I move on to almost my last question, I'm going to ask you something which Shashank Kriyapachank has asked. He's asked, but isn't something being construed as obscene a rather a subjective notion? Does that make sense?
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. I could not have said it better myself. It is a very subjective notion, and therefore 67A in that regard becomes a very difficult section for a court to implement, like I said. 67A, on the other hand, does not talk about sexually exciting or obscene content. It talks about sexually explicit act or conduct. To say that something is sexually explicit can be actually defined under the law. But to call something sexually exciting cannot be defined. It will always remain subjective. So 67A, which is the newer version of 67, puts more perspective into this and makes the law more specific and easy to understand. 67, although on the other hand was drafted in the year 2000, still remains as a part of the law, and in my honest opinion is a little redundant, and it's a little outdated.
Okay, okay, that's great. Now, we're Asian School of Cyber Laws, India's premier organization as far as cyber law is concerned. So we have to be slightly more forward-looking in our approach. So I'm going to ask you this question, and hopefully, I'll end with this. If you were to recommend any changes or clarifications to the Information Technology Act in itself, one, what would those be? And with regard to this case, is there something that you would want changed in any way?
I think the judgment in this case is spot on. They nipped the problem in the bud and clarified this. It's a clarification which I would not have thought was necessary, but somebody raised the question and it was very quickly and directly answered by the court. So that's fantastic. There are a lot of changes that would be required in the Information Technology Act. I mean, that can be a part of a completely different live in itself. But yes, there are changes that are required in terms of how we are going to deal with the new laws that are coming up in the context of data. How are we going to construe concepts relating to personal privacy, and what changes need to be brought about in the kind of liability that we hold upon intermediaries who are service providers on the internet. These are all aspects which will require deeper thinking and changes to be brought about very soon. There are laws which are coming into force, there are aspects which are being discussed, and we are looking forward to a very exciting time in this field.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Gokul. That was brilliant, absolutely. And I think this was a case which definitely needed this kind of a clarification by the courts as well as by, well, industry leaders. So thank you for that. Guys, thank you so much for joining us for this particular session. And we really hope to keep coming back to you with clarifications on various cases under cyber law and other fields of law. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All
Bye
right,
bye.
then. Bye. See
Thank
you.
you.